قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him. I'm going to back up and read about the will again and then keep going from there. وَالْإِرَادَةُ صِفَةٌ لِلَّهِ تَعَالَى, and will is an attribute of God. Exalted is He. أَزَلِيَّةٌ قَائِمَةٌ بِذَاتِهِ تَعَالَى, eternal, existing by His self, by His being. Existing by His being. Exalted is He. SharH, the explanation. أن الله تعالى يحدث الحادثات بإرادة, is that God, exalted is He, makes events occur by will, and that's indefinite, by the way. So by a will, or by will, yani by an attribute of His. This attribute is will. لا من طريق الإيجاب بذاته, not by way of creation being necessary because He exists. He makes events occur by will, not just because He exists. وقالت الفلاسفة إن الله تعالى موجب بالذات, and the philosophers said that God is indeed, I think this is mujidun بالذات, is event creator by His self. They mean that's something He does, not by a choice. لا فاعل بالإرادة والاختيار, He is not a doer by will and choice. He is event creator just for existing. And so the philosopher said Allah is indeed event creator by merely existing, not a doer by will and choice. Al-Ikhtiyar is one of the attributes of Allah, is confirmed in the Quran. وَيَخْلُقُ رَبُّكَ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيَخْتَارُ, your Lord creates what He wills, and He chooses. He chooses, He has two names that make that clear. Al-Muqaddim al-Mu'akhir, the advancer and the delayer. He makes one thing exist at sooner than another thing, or after another thing. بل لزم من وجود الله وجود العالم. They claimed that in fact it is necessary that the world exists because God exists. Binding by God's existence is the existence of the world. That's their creed. That's kufr. فَلِذَلِكَ الْعَالَمُ أَزَلِيٌّ مَعَ اللَّهِ. They said that's why the world is eternal with God. So this means they believe in two types of eternality, a fundamental one and a subordinate one. But they probably have their own words for this. Yeah, the philosophers have probably translated that old Greek talk into English and said it somehow. That means what we're talking about. And maybe if you saw what they said, Yani, those philosophers who translated that Greek stuff, it's probably not clear because that's their habit, how they talk. فَلِذَلِكَ الْعَالَمُ, they said that's why the world is eternal with God. وَهَذَا الْمَذْهَبُ الظَّاهِرُ الْبُطْلَانِ. In this way, this school is obviously invalid. So the philosophers had madhabs. لكن كيف راجع هذا الأمر على من كانوا ينتسبون إلى الإسلام من الفلاسفة? But how did this matter circulate amongst those who were affiliated with Islam amongst the philosophers? Yani, they were philosophers, so they were misguided, but they were affiliated with Islam. So how did it circulate amongst them that they somehow comprehended two types of eternality? That's a figurative usage of the word comprehension, by the way, because it's completely wrong. So there's no comprehension there. It's impossible. مثل ابن سينا, like Ibn Sina, he's one of them. وهناك طائفة من الطوائف الضالة, And there is also this deviant group amongst the other deviant groups. يقال لهم النجارية. They are called the Najjaris. يقولون إن الله مريد بذاته لا بصفة. They say Allah is indeed willer by his self, not by an attribute. So there's a footnote here for Najjariya. And so the footnote says they are a group who followed a man named Al-Husayn ibn Muhammad al-Najjar. So they were called the Najjariya. And they agreed with Ahlus Sunnah about the creation of the deeds. So that's a case in Aqidah. So if you've been studying Aqidah, now. We've been studying that together for some years. So you know about different cases. The case of the creation of the deeds. They agreed with Ahlus Sunnah about the creation of the deeds. Bismillah. Okay, so the footnote says they are a group who follow a man named Al-Husayn ibn Muhammad al-Najjar. They agree with Ahlus Sunnah in some cases, and they agree with the Mu'tazila in some cases. So they agree with Ahlus Sunnah about the case of creation of the deeds of the slaves. You know what that case is, because we've been studying Aqidah for years now. And they agree with Ahlus Sunnah about ability being simultaneous with the deed. You know that case, which basically boils down to what? That you can't do something until you do it. You can't do something. You don't have the ability to do something until you do it. That's what they're saying. That's what this means. They agree with Ahlus Sunnah that you don't have the ability to do something until you do it, not before you do it. What does that mean? It'll come inshallah. And they agree with Ahlus Sunnah that the slave acquires his acts, doesn't create his own act. So that means they're against the Mu'tazila here. All that is against Mu'tazila. But they agree with the Mu'tazila about denying the attributes of God, the real attributes. Yani, the Ma'ani attributes. They agree with the Mu'tazila about denying the Ma'ani attributes. That's atheism. And they agree with the Mu'tazila about saying that God doesn't have a speech that's an attribute of his self. Rather, he creates speech in some creation, and that will be his speech. That's blasphemy. And that's from the Mu'tazila. And they agree with the Mu'tazila about denying that God can be seen. So that's the case of the Najjariyah. Najjariyah are a group who agreed with Ahlus Sunnah in some cases and with Mu'tazila in some cases. Or if you want to say, they agree with the Mu'tazila in some cases. And they went against the Mu'tazila in some of their cases. Because Ahlus Sunnah is the base, is the origin. So Shaykh says, there was a group called the Najjariyah. They say that Allah is a willer by his being, not by an attribute. And there's another group called the Mu'tazila. A group of Mu'tazila. There's a group of Mu'tazila. وهناك طائفة من المعتزلة يقولون إنه مريد بإرادة حادثة. Those Mu'tazila say that he is a willer by an eventual will. He has an eventual will. So there are some Mu'tazila who are mushabbiha. We usually talk about the Mu'tazila in contrast to the mushabbiha. Mu'tazila, broadly speaking, are more atheistic and more philosophical. Mushabbiha are more paganistic, more like Christians and Jews. But there are Mu'tazila who are mushabbiha, because they said they said God wills in intervals. They said he has an eventual will, la fi mahal, and this will isn't anywhere. They said he has an eventual will that isn't anywhere. Wal-'iyadhu billahi ta'ala. I just recently understood what might be a line of poetry, or it's a proverb, or both of them. I think it's just a piece, not a whole line, and they say it like it's a proverb. Wal jununu fununu, wal jununu fununu, wal jununu fununu. That means insanity has many styles. They said Allah Ta'ala has an eventual will that isn't anywhere. ويعنون بذلك أن الإرادة التي هو مريد بها حادثة في غير محل. So what they mean is that the will by which he is a willer is eventual and not anywhere. So, yeah, he explained in Arabic what they said, so it just came out the same way when I translated it. يقولون لا هي قائمة بذات الله ولا هي قائمة بشيء غيره. They say this eventual will is not existing by God's being, nor is it existing by anything else. وهذا أيضا ظاهر البطلان, and this is also obviously invalid. So all of this is some talk about the will of God. We learned about the will of Allah Ta'ala in so many lessons. What's interesting about the Shaykh's approach here, about explaining what An-Nasafiyyah said here. An-Nasafiyyah said, and irada is an attribute of Allah Ta'ala that's eternal, existing by His self. Yes, that statement is very standard for us. And then, we would explain it. We would say, this means that Allah has an attribute called will. His will is His attribute by which He specifies, etc., etc., etc. We have some standard talk there. Here, the Shaykh didn't go into that standard talk. Rather, the Shaykh went into some details. And he went into some interesting facts. He talked about the philosophers and what they said. Basically saying God creates by nature, by a nature that He has. And he talked about the Islamic philosophers. And he talked about what the Najjariyah said. The Shaykh says, وَهُنَاكَ أَيْضًا طَائِفَةٌ تُسَمَّى الْكَرَّامِيَّةِ. And there's also a sect called the Karramis. Footnote. They are the followers of Muhammad ibn Karram. We spoke about him before. He has many strayings. One of them is his claim that God has a limit, and that limit is only from one direction. He says Allah has one side. Although there are 6 directions, He only has one side, which is the side by which He contacts the Arsh. And he says that things happen to God. Sayings and wills and realizations happen to God. And many other things he says. Very bad person, this one. Muhammad ibn Karram. But we can't go into that now. يقولون, they say, إرادته حادثة في ذاته تعالى. His will happens within Himself. وهذا أيضا ظاهر البطلان. And this is also obviously invalid. لأن الذات المقدسة لو كان يحدث فيه شيء لكان حادثا. Because the holy being, the holy self, uh, had something happened to him, then he would have been created himself. And had he been created, وَلَوْ كَانَ حَادِثًا لَاحْتَاجَ إِلَى مُحْدِثٍ. And had he been created, he would have been in need of an event creator. He would have been in need of someone to make him occur. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ إِلَهًا مُحْدِثًا لِلْعَالَمِ. And then he wouldn't have been a God who made the world happen. وَقَدْ تَقَدَّمَ ذَلِكَ. And this has already been presented. قال ملا علي القاري. Mullah Ali Al-Qari said في شرح الفقه الأكبر ما نصه. In the explanation of Al-Fiqh Al-Akbar, he said, quote, والمحققون من أهل السنة يقولون الإرادة في كتاب الله تعالى نوعان. The meticulous ones from the people of the prophetic way say that the will of God is mentioned in the Quran in two ways. If I translate his statement very literally, he says, the will in the book of Allah is two types. Al-ula iradatun qudriyatun kawniyatun khalqiyah. One of those ways the will of God is mentioned in the Quran is uh, the will of power, the creating will related to giving being. So that's his words here. Interesting words here. Iradatun qudriyah. So I don't know that the Shaykh has any comment against that statement there. But yani, all I know is that we passed the statement on from Mullah Ali al-Qari. And his clear statement and his beneficial statement. Just some commenting here because he said iradatun qudriyah. So it's like saying a will of power or a powerful will. A powerful will or a will of power. So we know he has an attribute called will. He has an attribute called power. It's not the same attribute. But this is what he said here. So he said the will of God is mentioned in the book of God in two ways. One of them is a will of power and a creating will that's related to giving being. وهي المشيئة الشاملة لجميع الحوادث. That is the will inclusive of all happenings. لقوله تعالى, proven by what God said. Exalted is He. فَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَهْدِيَهُ يَشْرَحْ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ. Anyone whom Allah willed to guide, He expands his chest, He makes his chest receptive to Islam. وَمَنْ يُرِدْ أَنْ يُضِلَّهُ يَجْعَلْ صَدْرَهُ ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا. And whomever He wills to misguide, to lead astray, He makes his chest tight, constricted, yani not receptive to Islam. كَأَنَّمَا يَصَّعَّدُ فِي السَّمَاءِ. As if he is suffocating, ascending up into the heaven. As if he is running out of air, ascending into the heaven. That's how his chest becomes constricted. It's the 125th ayah of Surah Al-An'am. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. وَالثَّانِيَةُ إِرَادَةٌ دِينِيَّةٌ أَمْرِيَّةٌ شَرْعِيَّةٌ. He says the second way it's mentioned is a religious uh, will that is related to uh, directives and law. وهي المتضمنة للمحبة والرضا. And this is the will that its meaning encompasses acceptance, approval, acceptance and approval. So if the word want works for Allah, this is where it goes. Some people might say Allah wants to such and such. We usually don't say, we just say Allah wills. But if the word want were to work, it's this way. كقوله يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر. So if that were what works, it would translate this way. Allah wants for you the ease and does not want for you the difficulty. This refers to how he made the laws for us. Because if I say he wills for you the ease, then the way we usually talk, that might make you think that he created the ease for you in a way that's unavoidable, that shall come into being. That's not the intended meaning here. The meaning is like what Mullah Ali said, rahimahullah, that it's approval. It means an easy religious law has been sanctioned for you. That's the meaning of the ayah. That's the 185th ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah. Fa'idah, benefit. قال العلامة محمد بن أحمد ميارة المالكي. The savant, Muhammad, son of Ahmad, who's called Mayara, the Maliki. He said, في كتابه الدر الثمين والمورد I don't remember if that's Al-Ma'in or Al-Mu'in. So he said in his book, الدر الثمين, that's that Maliki book that we cited in the beginning of this book that we're going over now. If you remember, and we're going to mention it right now, there's a very famous Maliki text, very prestigious classical work. If you get a chance to take it, take it. Inshallah, yani, it's like getting a crown. It's like getting a crown. It's the poem of Ibn Ashir. So it has Aqidah and it has rules, and it's like the obligatory knowledge, but a little bit more than obligatory knowledge. If you learn it, you will fulfill the obligatory knowledge, inshallah, according to the Maliki school. Maybe, I don't remember if it has some chapters about blasphemy in there, and also about sales. Don't recall if it has in there anything about sales, but it has about sins. So anyway, Ibn Ashir, he did that poem, and Mayyara the Maliki explained it. So here we are citing it again, and the name of his explanation is Ad-Durru Thamin. He said, الثاني تكلم الناظم أي ابن عاشر على صفات المعاني. The second point, so this means this is an excerpt from his talk, and he was saying something before. We've selected something here, and we're starting here. He says, the second issue is that the composer, meaning Ibn Ashir, spoke about the ma'ani attributes. وهي القدرة والإرادة والعلم والحياة والسمع والبصر والكلام. And they are power, will, knowledge, life, hearing, sight, and speech. Okay, you know those are the ma'ani by consensus. And which one is not mentioned here that according to us is also ma'ani, one of the ma'ani attributes, everlastingness. They differed about that. وَلَمْ يَتَكَلَّمْ عَلَى الْمَعْنَوِيَّةِ. He says, but the composer didn't talk about the ma'nawiyah attributes. So you remember, Allah Ta'ala, there are 13 attributes that He has that's obligatory on every accountable person to learn. Out of those 13 attributes, 7 of them are called ma'ani attributes, for sure, by consensus. They differed about one of them. Let's just stick to what's here. So these ma'ani attributes, we just listed them. And you should know them, insha'Allah ta'ala, for the amount of time we've been studying together and for the level of books we've been reading, then you should know them. You should know what's sifat nafsiyah and what's sifat salbiyah and what are sifat ma'ani. And you should also know which one they differed about. Is it salbiyah or one of the ma'ani? If you don't know those, then know them, yani, by today or tomorrow. Now, these 7, we said there's 13, and these are 7. Didn't some scholars say that there are 20 attributes that are obligatory to know? Yes. So 13 they agreed about, and some said 20, which means there's another 7 according to some. 7 like the ma'ani attributes? Exactly. 7 like the ma'ani attributes are 7. 7 and 7 are 14. That's right. And then, so that means 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. There's 6 more left. Yes, one of them is sifat nafsiyah, and 4 of them are sifat salbiyah by consensus, and one of them is they differed about it. Okay, so these extra 7 that some of them said are obligatory to know. What are they? Those are called the ma'nawiyah attributes. Not ma'ani, ma'nawiyah. And if you're still a little bit weak here, then you're going to mix up ma'ani and ma'nawiyah, unless it's just an honest slip of the tongue. Either it's going to be really because you're not firm there, so you said the wrong word, or if you're firm and you say the wrong word here, then it's going to be a tongue slip. The ma'nawiyah attributes, وهي, they are كونه تعالى قادرا ومريدا وعالما وحيا وسميعا وبصيرا ومتكلما. His being powerful, a willer, a knower, alive, a hearer, a seer, and a speaker. Exalted is He. Now, when you're still not very strong here, you wouldn't even see what's the point of these attributes. Why say you have to know 20? Yani, like, you may have learned that there's 13 that are obligatory to know by consensus. And some said 20. So you say, wow, some said 20. I wonder what those other 7 are. I sure would like to learn 7 more attributes of Allah. And then you learn these 7. You might say, that's it? Yani, it's like the ones we already said. I thought it was something else. So that's why some scholars said these 7 are not necessary. Not necessary to say it's obligatory to know them, that is. Not necessary to say it's obligatory to know them. Because they are already understood by the 7 we already mentioned. So what's the difference? Yani, they should mean something that the other ones don't mean, or else what's the point? So yes, there is a meaning that the other ones don't mean, which is these are the descriptive names. Those first 7 are the attributes. These are the names. Names that are proven by those attributes. So the Qadir is the one who has Qudra. Qudra is the attribute. The Qadir is the one who has it. Power. So he's powerful. And etc. We spoke about this before. So the Alim is the one who has ilm. Ilm is knowledge. That's the attribute. So the Alim is the knower. So some of them said it's obligatory to know his being powerful and know his being a willer and his being a knower. So that's different from saying power and will and knowledge. But not so different that it's necessary. It's not so far that it's necessary to say that these are obligatory like those are obligatory. وذلك والله أعلم بناء على مذهب الإمام الأشعري من نفي الحال وأنه لا واسطة بين الوجود والعدم. There's something I need explained for me here, but I will inshallah will translate this accurately for you. So he says, the composer Ibn Ashir, he mentioned the ma'ani attributes and he didn't mention the ma'nawiyyah attributes, which are these, and then he listed them. And then he says, why? Why didn't he mention the ma'nawiyyah attributes? He says, and that's because, and God knows best, and God knows best based on Imam al-Ash'ari's way. Min nafy al-hal, which is al-Ash'ari negates that there's something for God called, let's say, a situation. He negates that there's something for God called a situation. وَأَنَّهُ لَا وَاسِطَةَ بَيْنَ الْوُجُودِ وَالْعَدَمِ. And he didn't go into these ma'nawiyyah attributes because there's no medium between existence and non-existence. فالثابت من الصفات التي تقوم بالذات إنما هو الصفات المعاني. And so, what's confirmed of attributes that exist by God's being is merely the ma'ani attributes. أما المعنوية, but concerning the ma'nawiyyah attributes, فعبارة عن قيام تلك بالذات لا أن لها ثبوتا في الخارج عن الذهن. Okay. He says, as for the ma'nawiyyah attributes, they refer to the ma'ani attributes being confirmed for God's self. And they are not real. They do not have a confirmation. They do not have confirmation beyond one's conception. They do not have confirmation beyond one's conception. All right. So what's Mu'tazila creed? Mu'tazila creed is that is to confirm these ma'nawiyyah attributes. The Mu'tazila confirm these ma'nawiyyah attributes. They say he is qadir and murid and alim, etc. But they deny the ma'ani. They say, but not by qudrah or irada or ilm. He's knower, not by knowledge though, and alive, not by life though, seer, not by sight though. So they confirm the ma'nawiyah. They don't confirm the ma'ani. So we're going to call the ma'ani the real attributes. They don't confirm the real attributes. Real here means they have true existence beyond our mere conception. Our conception of them is not them. Our conception of them refers to them, and they exist truly. Beyond our mere conception does not mean in a place. So his knowledge exists truly. It's not our mere conception of something. And also his power and his will and his life and his hearing and his sight and his speech. They are real and he can see them. Allah sees his attributes because they really exist and they're not in a place and they're not pieces or parts. Their existence is not our conception of them. These real attributes, the Mu'tazila deny them. They say there are no real attributes. There aren't any real ones. There are ma'nawiyyah attributes, though, according to the Mu'tazila. His being powerful and willer and knower. What's being said here, though, is that this meaning is mere conception on our part, though. To say he is powerful, he is willer, he is knower. This is conception on our part. What's truly existing beyond our mere conception is the self of God and his real attributes. And his being powerful and his being a willer and his being a knower, that's conception on our part. Not real attributes that exist beyond our conception. Okay, so that's one thing. If you have any question there, ask me, please. Now, let me read again what he says here. So Mayyara the Maliki said, the composer Ibn Ashir talked about the ma'ani attributes: power, will, knowledge, life, hearing, sight, and speech. So those are his real attributes that exist beyond our mere conception, without a place. And the composer did not speak about the ma'nawiyyah attributes, which are his being powerful and a willer and a knower and alive and a hearer and a seer and a speaker. Okay, so now this is clear so far. And that, he's not speaking about that. And Allah knows best, Mayara says, is based on, it's because he follows the way of Imam al-Ash'ari. And al-Ash'ari, he negates something that is coined by some as, and this is my translation here, God's situation, hal. That's from some Mu'tazila. These Mu'tazila deny the attributes of Allah and they confirm for him ma'nawiyyah attributes. وَأَنَّهُ لَا وَاسِطَةَ بَيْنَ الْوُجُودِ وَالْعَدَمِ. And these Mu'tazila believe about this situation that it's not existence nor is it nothingness. It's neither existence nor is it nothingness. So what is it? It is, according to them, and I'm translating this way, a situation for God. So this means they confirm for God, or they even just confirm, this means they confirm a medium between existence and non-existence. So for them, existence, for example, is like standing, and non-existence is like laying down. And then there's something in the middle, which would be like sitting. Because sitting is not standing nor laying down. For us, that's invalid. Rather, existence and non-existence is like sitting and not sitting. There's no medium between those. But so, and then I say I have a question here. So there's something that's not linking this together for me. I need a link. I'm missing. So Mayara goes on. He says, فَالثَّابِتُ مِنَ الصِّفَاتِ الَّتِي تَقُومُ بِالذَّاتِ. And so, what's confirmed of attributes that exist by God's being, إِنَّمَا هُوَ صِفَاتُ الْمَعَانِي, is merely the ma'ani attributes. Those are the real attributes. أَمَّا الْمَعْنَوِيَّةِ, as for the ma'nawiyyah attributes, so maybe means conceptual. Ma'nawiyyah does mean conceptual. Ma'nawi means, would translate as conceptual or abstract. فَعِبَارَةٌ عَنْ قِيَامِ تِلْكَ بِالذَّاتِ. Those are a reference to those real attributes being confirmed for the self. لا أن لها ثبوتا في الخارج عن الذهن. They don't mean that yani, referencing them or citing them or having a name here doesn't mean that there's an attribute confirmed beyond our conception. Doesn't confirm that there's a real attribute with this name. وأما على مذهب غيره من القول بثبوت الأحوال. And as for the way of others, the way of someone else, not al-Ash'ari, من القول بثبوت الأحوال, the way of confirming situations for God, that's Mu'tazili way. وهي صفات ثبوتية ليست بموجودة ولا معدومة. And they define these as confirmed attributes that are neither existent nor non-existent. تقوم بالموجود, confirmed for an existing one. فتكون هذه الصفات المعنوية صفات ثابتة قائمة بذاته تعالى. Then these abstract attributes would be attributes confirmed, real attributes, they would be real attributes confirmed for God's self, existing by God's being. Exalted is He. فلا بد من ذكرها. And so they must be mentioned. So there's something here it's not clear for me. I would like nice Shaykh who can explain this. Yeah, and one who can explain these words here, he's probably a good one. إلا أنه لوحظ فيها كونه ملازمة للسبع الأولى. يعني because here, didn't I say this is Mu'tazili way, this confirmation of Ahwal? Yeah, but he's not talking about Mu'tazila. Even some Ahlul Sunnah said this talk. They said it's obligatory to know these. So I'm missing a link here. إلا أنه لوحظ فيها كونها ملازمة للسبع الأولى. However, it is noticed that these seven, if you want, abstract attributes or conceptual attributes are linked to the first seven, the real attributes. He says, وَكَوْنُ الْأُولَى عِلَلًا لِهَذِهِ. This is his wording, the wording of Mayara. And it is noticed that those first seven, those real attributes, are reasons for these abstract ones. So the Shaykh doesn't agree with this wording here, but I'm just translating what he says. أي ملزومة لها, أي ملزومة لها, meaning bound to them. إذ لا يصح اتصاف محل بكونه قادرا أو عالما مثلا إلا إذا قامت به القدرة أو العلم. Because it's not valid to attribute some subject with being powerful or knower, for example, without the confirmation of his having power or knowledge. وَكَذَا الْبَاقِي. And likewise the rest. And so are the rest. وَلِذَلِكَ كَانَتْ سَبْعًا مِثْلَ الْأُولَى. This is why these abstract or conceptual attributes are seven, like those first ones are seven, like the real ones are seven. وَلِذَلِكَ أَيْضًا نُسِبَتْ هَذِهِ إِلَى تِلْكَ. And this is also why these seven are named after those seven. Because the first seven, those real attributes are called ma'ani, and then these second seven, these conceptual ones or abstract ones are called ma'nawiyyah, so they're named after them. فَقِيلَ فِيهَا صِفَاتٌ مَعْنَوِيَّةٌ. And so they were therefore called ma'nawiyyah attributes. وَالْيَاءُ فِي لَفْظِ الْمَعْنَوِيَّةِ يَاءُ النَّسَبِ إلى المعنى. And so the ya here, this ya in the word ma'nawiyah is the ya of attribution. And it's being attributed to the word ma'na. Ma'na is the singular of ma'ani. والواو فيها excuse me. والواو فيه بدل من الألف. And the wow that's in ma'nawi is a replacement for the alif, because it was ma'na. Here's alif, ma'na. So you have the meme, you have the ayn. When you say ma'nawi, you have the meme, you have the ayn, you have the noon, ma'na. So the original word is ma'na. When you say ma'nawi, you got the meme, you got the ayn, you got the noon. Where'd the wow come from? So this wow is a replacement for this alif. so that you can attach this ya of attribution. So it becomes ma'nawi. And then the ta marbuta is for plurality. So he says, وَالْوَاوُ فِيهِ بَدَلٌ مِنَ الْأَلِفِ الَّتِي فِي الْمَعْنَى. And the waw that's in the word ma'nawi is a replacement for the alif that's in the word ma'na. Intaha, end quote. So we'll stop there. Until now, mashallah, this explanation of An-Nasafiyyah is my favorite Aqidah book. It's my personal favorite manual. MashaAllah. My favorite Aqidah book used to be As-Siratul Mustaqim, the Shaykh's Metin. But my very favorite is this explanation of An-Nasafiyyah so far. May Allah grant me more. Ameen. And then maybe I'll make a new decision.